Good afternoon and welcome everyone for this final session of Nova Scotia Human Rights Week. We've saved the best for last, some might say. My name is Jeff Overmars. I'm a communications advisor at the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, and it's my pleasure to introduce this afternoon's presenter in just a moment. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we're participating in this Zoom webinar virtually in Mi'kmaq, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Mi'kmaq have made these lands their home since time immemorial, and they are the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. Our relationships in Mi'kmaq are governed by the treaties of peace and friendship. It is the Commission, rather, acknowledges and values such Mi'kmaq teachings as Imsit Nogama, meaning all my relations, which values the inherent interconnectivity of all things. And it is our hope that through presentations such as this and others that we've held this week, that we're able to continue to build bridges of learning and understanding and curiosity to help foster greater inclusion and closeness in relationship within Mi'kmaq. I would like to acknowledge the debt that the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission owes to African Nova Scotians and persons of African descent, in particular, for their work in advocating for inclusion, not only within their own communities, but within all communities in Nova Scotia, through their work that established the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, and in fact, their work in drafting the Nova Scotia Human Rights Act. That Nova Scotia Human Rights Act gave the Commission a mandate to protect human rights through a formalized dispute resolution process. It was not until the inquiry into the wrongful conviction of Donald Marshall Jr. that the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission was given its mandate to educate and foster greater understanding of human rights in Nova Scotia. It was due to the findings of that inquiry and the recommendations of that inquiry, which included the establishment of an education branch within the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. We honor that legacy and try to ensure that our work builds upon the foundational work of our forebears. I do want to again welcome everybody for being here with us today. I'd like to point out we have ASL interpretation on the call, and if you wish, you can spotlight the ASL interpreter to have them appear larger. Also, you can turn on closed captioning at the bottom of the screen with the closed caption button. You'll also note at the bottom of the screen a Q&A box. It's within that box that you can type any questions that may come to you during the presentation or at the end of the presentation, at which time our presenter will address those questions. Without further ado, I did want to introduce today's topic, which is Tajikeimik, fostering holistic wellness and strengthening community health. Tajikeimik is a health and wellness organization that is leading health transformation for Mi'kmaq communities in Nova Scotia. And our presenter today is Nicholas Phillips. Nick is the Director of Mental Wellness and Health, Nick, Mental Wellness and Healing at Tajikeimik. And so thank you very much again, Nick, for being here. And I'd give you the floor. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeff. And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. As we kind of wind down towards the holiday season, it's a really busy time for all of us. And so super thankful that today is Friday, that the sun is shining, and hey, it's Friday the 13th. So that's always a bonus as well. So again, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here. For those of you who may know me, and for those of you who don't, my name is Nick Phillips. I come from Millbrook First Nation, currently reside along the Salmon River with my husband and our two beautiful children. Prior to my role here as the Director of Mental Wellness and Healing at Tajikeimik, I was a public servant, and so coming from the Office of Illinois Affairs most recently, and moving back into community to do all of this amazing work that we are doing. And so my hope is over the next hour is to kind of just share where we are as a nation in terms of reclaiming and holding the self-autonomy and self-sovereignty around our health and wellness and what our communities need. And so, to start this conversation off is recognizing our authority, our organization as being Tajikeimik, which translates to the English language as to be healthy. And so what does that mean? And so over the next hour, my hope is to kind of share what that means and what that looks like and how all Nova Scotians and all people have a role and responsibility in creating space and opportunity for Tajikeimik to continue to grow and flourish. So I'll first begin by just acknowledging Tajikeimik and what we represent and who we represent. And so Tajikeimik is the new and rising second health authority in the province of Nova Scotia. That this health authority specifically speaks to the Mi'kmaq communities of Nova Scotia, and recognizing that we do have 13 communities across the province. With Tajikeimik's establishment, we have two offices, one located in the Millbrook office and Millbrook community, and we have the second office, which is located in Unama'ki, Cape Breton, in the community of Member 2. So, I think it's important in kind of having a conversation around even why, the Mi'kmaq should have a right or have a right to establishing their own health authority, their own health organization, and why it's important. I think, one of the most important things is recognizing is that all Nova Scotians across our beautiful province and across our beautiful territory recognize that health is a major concern for all of us. That, wellness and healing is something that we all have to experience and that we all endure and that we all engage with. And so what's important is that the way in which we approach health and the way in which we access health and healing has to be culturally responsive, that it has to meet the needs of the people. And, as we continue to have a larger conversation in Nova Scotia about what that looks like, is we're recognizing that people are growing, that concerns are growing, that lived experiences are different. And the way that we live is not the way that we lived 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago. And so from a cultural point of view, is that there's also importance and relevance into why such an organization like ours is important. And, I want to recognize that people should have the right to be able to enter the health realm and feel safe and feel like they are going to be cared for and that they're going to be able to access the pathways and avenues that they need to find healing within themselves. And so for us, our approach and our work here in Tajikeimik is recognizing that cultural safety and holistic care is important, that Mi'kmaq people should have the right to practice traditional healing practices, that we should have the right and ability to use our language, that it's important that our ways of knowing offer a holistic approach to health that addresses not just the physicalness of who we are, but it also represents and supports our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Because I think a lot of us are now coming to the realization that, hey, health isn't just about our physical well-being, that people actually have emotions, that people actually have mental and cognitive processes, and that each and every single one of us in its fluidity has a spiritual well-being as well. and that looks different for everyone. And so to be responsive and to be inclusive and to be equitable is recognizing that people have to be able to show up in spaces in their authentic self. We also recognize self-determination in acknowledging that the transforming the health system empowers our Mi'kmaq communities to design and deliver health services that meet the specific needs and the cultural values of community, ensuring autonomy over healthcare governance. And so, I think that in a compare and contrast, as Nova Scotians, when we think about self-determination, even as a collective, is that we have to be the ones that are creating the healthcare system for us, by us, for our people. And so it's not about going out and adopting what other healthcare systems are doing and then applying them here, because we're learning that doesn't work. That the people living here in this place are very unique and they're very different. And so when we put that in the context of culture and we put that in the context of people, is that Mi'kmaq also have to see themselves within that healthcare system, in that health framework, in that structure, in that governance. And so self-determination is important. It's also about addressing the systemic inequities in recognizing the historical and the ongoing inequities that we see within the health outcomes that are caused by these colonial systems, the continued racist barriers and the racism that is experienced within these systems. That if these systems have been created without us, then how can we expect to see ourselves within it? What's also important is recognizing that, it's not just a random thought that's like, hey, let's just give a nation their own ability to open their own health authority. That's not the way that things are done. Uh, but in certainly recognizing the intention and the need for this. And so our understanding and the way that we approach and share with partners is that this is a strength-based approach, that this is evidence-based, that our work, the work that's happening in transformation, aligns with the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, specifically highlighting the calls to action around health, which are 18 to 24. But I wanted to highlight calls to action 19 and 22 in recognizing that call to 19 urges governments to close health outcome gaps between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. That call 22 calls for recognition and support of traditional healing practices in collaboration with elders and knowledge keepers. That Mi'kmaq health transformation directly fulfills these by integrating traditional knowledge and reducing those health discrepancies and experiences that we currently are seeing within this colonial system. On a broader TRC principle is that health transformation respects the TRC's emphasis on honoring Indigenous sovereignty and repairing the relationships damaged by colonial policies like residential schools, the 60 scoop, the enfranchisement, centralization, in recognizing that trauma and intergenerational trauma continues. It also aligns with UNDRIP in recognizing that Canada has signed on to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. That Article 3 asserts the right to self-determination, which includes controlling the health systems. That Article 24 recognizes the right of Indigenous people to their traditional medicines to maintain their health systems and practices. That Article 18 calls for Indigenous people's participation in decision-making on matters affecting their rights. That for a very long time, history has demonstrated that Mi'kmaq people have not been invited to these conversations, that space has not been created for our communities to be able to have these types of conversations. That if the research shows that the vast majority of pharmaceuticals come from Indigenous populations across the world, then Indigenous people need to be included in health delivery as well. That these are our medicines that we've used for time immemorial to find wellness and healing. And so, how do we create transparency and relationship in bridging the medicines that we've taken from Indigenous populations to now create space for Indigenous populations to speak of their methodologies and their processes and their medicines? That all of these are things are important. It also aligns with the Canadian Constitution in recognizing that Section 35 recognizes Aboriginal and treaty right, and knowing that Aboriginal rights and treaty rights are two very different things. But what those two things do for the Mi'kmaq people is affirm that Indigenous peoples have the inherent rights, including the right to self-governance and healthcare, as part of the broader treaty rights and Indigenous sovereignty. In terms of legal proceedings, is that Canadian courts have increasingly affirmed the necessity of upholding Indigenous rights, including the right to equitable access to services, and that the Mi'kmaq health transformation aligns with these principles by addressing historical injustices and the systemic system barriers that continue to exist. And so, talking about the strength base, talking about all of these different policies and documentations, this evidence based around Mi'kmaq's right, their sovereignty, their right to self-determination is important. And so let's talk about health transformation. Let's talk about where we are and why we are here. And so health transformation is the process of the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia taking control of the design and the delivery of their health and wellness services to improve overall health for individuals and community. And so this is directly coming from Mi'kmaq leadership, that all 13 communities have come together to give direction, that our leadership is saying that we have to transform the way that services are delivered to better meet community needs through the creation of a Mi'kmaq Health and Wellness Authority. And so I want to talk about authority here for a moment, because in the colonial context, we are an authority. You have Nova Scotia Health Authority, and now you have the Mi'kmaq Health Authority. Now, the interesting thing, and this is why health transformation is so important, is that in the Mi'kmaq language, there is no word for authority. And so for us, as an organization, is we recognize that the autonomy, the self-autonomy of community lies within community. That we are not a hierarchical system that is essentially going to own and control Mi'kmaq health and wellness. That instead, we are going to be partners to Mi'kmaq health and wellness, in recognizing that every single community, as its own entity, has the right to self-determination and sovereignty over their health. And so our Mi'kmaq Health and Wellness Authority to us is the Mi'kmaq Health and Wellness Organization, where our practices and approaches will be done on the collective consciousness of all the 13 communities. That Tajikeimik serves as an entry point in being able to discuss what the collective consciousness is of Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia. We also recognize our approach is that the establishment of the Mi'kmaq Health and Wellness Organization is the first step in health transformation. That mechanisms to accept responsibility for health service delivery and to work with communities and partners need to happen to improve the coordination and access to services. And when we think about what that means then is how do we translate that into a vision and a mission? Is that we are working toward better health for all of our communities. That's what it is that the way that we have experienced our relationship within the colonial context has been very messy. It's been very one-sided. And that has resulted in a lot of things that have happened and continue to happen in our community that the colonial system doesn't have answers to. That the system doesn't have processes and practices in place to address the multi-layer concerns that are coming from community. And so who better to address health than the people that are experiencing it, the people that are watching it unfold. And so that's what the transformation of this process is that there is a transfer from the federal government and of course our provincial partners in recognizing that we have to do this hand in hand, that it's not just about packing everything up and giving it to the Mi'kmaq and say, here you go, good luck. Because the reality is that we're all living in Nova Scotia. We're all still have to access hospitals. We still have to access emergency response. But we also have the ability to start having conversations about, well, what would it look like if? And what if we did it this way? And so those things are very important. So when we talk about the organization itself then, and its purpose, is that it's really foundational in recognizing that our work is about eduoptimum. It's about two-eyed seeing. It's about recognizing the strengths of who we are as Mi'kmaq people, but also recognizing the continued work that Western science and Western modalities continue to offer as we all move forward. And so from a communal standpoint, is that our organizational approach and purpose is to decolonize and rebuild Indigenous health systems. Now, we could go off on an entire tangent on decolonization and what that looks like. And you know, decolonization seems to be the buzzword right now, is that everybody wants to decolonize everything. But before you can decolonize anything, you have to indigenize everything before you can decolonize. Because to decolonize is to recognize what colonization has done. And it's not about decolonizing for Indigenous people. It's not just about decolonizing for African Nova Scotians or the Black community. It's about decolonizing for all of us. that these structures that have been created, they're just not working. And they're not working. And you know it's not working because look at the state of our healthcare right now. And so to the status quo, well, that's how we've been doing it for 5 years, 10 years, the last 500 years. And that just don't work anymore. That to our community, it's working around high quality and culturally safe health programs and services. That the way in which our women access health has to be different and understood differently than the way men access health, the way that elders access health, or youth, or even parents, and our LGBTQIA community, our Two-Spirit and our Indigenous Square community. That health looks different and sounds different and feels different within those populations of people. And so we have to be culturally responsive and we have to ensure a high quality of programs and services so that people feel part of the healing and not alienated from trying to access what we would say healing lodges or places of healing. Translate that to English, hospitals, walk-in clinics, and care facilities. To our communities, it's also about advancing health issues by addressing matters that impact health. That if the vast majority of the Mi'kmaq communities in Nova Scotia are not in close proximity to a hospital, that's problematic. That our community members should not have to wait for an ambulance to show up to then transport them, some of them, over an hour to their nearest hospital. And to our community, it's also about health surveillance. It's about research, and it's about being innovative in the way that we're approaching our work. Is that the research and the data and the way that we engage with numbers is done so in a very respectful and ceremonial way. That as Mi'kmaq people, as a nation, we have the right to data sovereignty. We have the right to protect our numbers, to acknowledge where we are without the exploitation of saying, hey, you know, those Indigenous people have high suicide rates, they have high mental health issues, they have high addiction issues. That has to be our story. It has to be told from our point of view. It's also why we're acknowledging that my role is not mental health and addictions. That addictions is an oxymoron. That addictions is the top of the iceberg in all of the lived experience. And so we're not focusing there. We're focusing on well-being and healing. To our partners, in recognizing Tuaitziin, it means that we have to collaborate with the provincial healthcare system. We have to collaborate with our provincial partners to improve access to culturally informed and culturally safe care, integrating programs and services, but also improving transitions. That while we, as a nation, as our 13 Mi'kmaq communities, work to enhance and redesign the way we approach health within community, we also have to ensure that there is Tuaitziin within the current Nova Scotia Health Authority system so that the alienation, separation, segregation isn't happening. That we can access the healthcare system in a culturally responsive way, just as everybody else should be able to do that. It also means that we're collaborating with provincial, not only our provincial health system, but also our educational partners in recognizing that we have quite a few institutions within this province And so we have to build relationship with these educational institutions to say, we need culturally responsive programming. We need to be able to develop curricula, degrees, diplomas that are going to meet the needs and responsibilities of our community. And so it's about collaboration. It's about doing it together. It's about learning it around wise and best practices. So when we talk about then, well, where are we? Where is Tajikeimik in all of this process? Is that Tajikeimik is focused in two areas. We're focused on the transformation. And so that transformation begun with the province and the federal government in signing a trilateral memorandum of understanding that says, yes, transformation has to happen. It doesn't have to happen overnight, and that we have a plan, that the transformation will take 7 years to be fully implemented. But we're in that motion of being able to do that. And so our goal is to have the transformation completed in some degree of its entirety by 2027, 2028. Our other focus is around service delivery. What are we actually out there doing? Not just transferring things, but now what are you transferring and how are you enhancing and redesigning the way that services are delivered within community? And so these next couple of slides is going to talk about our beautiful team and all the people that are working in different areas of focus and trying to reimagine where we could go in health transformation and in self-determination. So the first thing that I recognize is our beautiful team of Nujia Bahanwiet, which translates to essentially our hospital helpers. And so these 5 humans who are part of our team spend a wealth of their time within the already health system, supporting Mi'kmaq and Indigenous people who currently find themselves within these institutions. And so our Nujia Bahanwiet team, provides holistic support for patients and families. They also offer Mi'kmaq translation and language assistance for those that need it. But they're also a friend where, as we all know, being in a hospital can be quite frightening for some individuals, that being in a hospital can be lonely, that it can be isolated, that it's very focused on getting people better and well so we can push them back out into the world. And so our Nujia Bahanwiet are there as friends, as family, creating opportunity to comfort and to have conversations and to provide a familiar face within these hospitals. They're also there to help communicate with hospital staff, to help that translation, that bridging of understanding. They also, support the social justice area of knowing in ensuring and encouraging inclusion of culture and ceremony into care. That if we're recognizing that people are more than just their physical selves, that people have spiritualness to them, that they have a spiritual self, well, then we have to create opportunity for people to find balance within that as well. They're also super handy in providing small errands for patients. I forgot my toothbrush. I forgot a blanket. we're there to help. To not only encouraging inclusion of culture and ceremony, they're also there to actually provide the spiritual or religious support. That they have the ability as Mi'kmaq to participate in ceremony because it's something we all carry. In that transition from hospital to community, they're there as liaisons. They're there to support people in that transition from hospital to home and community. And they're also there to assist with accessing relevant services and programs as we make those transitions home. So very important. We jump to our early years in recognizing that health and wellness and well-being isn't just about adults, that we have to start off with our little people. And so our Umsit Mijiwajij program really co-creates early childhood programming that supports Indigenous parents and communities where it matters most. And that's right in their homes. And so our Umsit Mijiwajij team does home visiting. That's bringing not only community-based supports in the sense of providing, we could equate that to early intervention uh, in relation to the province. But these individuals are not, marked as, hey, we need early intervention. We're saying all families deserve early intervention, that all families deserve the opportunity to engage and learn something new. And so our Umsit Mijiwajij program is a balanced program that offers not only, child development techniques and support, but it's all wrapped in culture. It's wrapped in language. It's wrapped in cooking. It's wrapped in language that's appropriate in transferring and sharing between parents and children. But also recognizing, again, that if we're working with institutions, that we have to create programming that supports the needs of our community. And so we recognize the Bakjiginamalsuti Delgina Mujik Mijiwajij program, which is the Mi'kmaq version of the Early Childhood Education Diploma, which can be found and housed at the Nova Scotia Community College. That we are producing our own early childhood educators that are founded in culture and language and identity. This image that you see here on the side is just a quick shot of the poster that we share in our communities, which highlight all of the different activities that are happening in the month of November or had happened in the month of November, from everything from well baby check-ins to quill workshops, to meeting with speech and language pathologist, teaching parents how to sew moss bags for newborn babies, or even making ribbon skirts to ensure that culture and identity is within the home. We also have our own new nursing. And so before I share that, we're going to take 2 minutes and we're going to watch this beautiful video that was created in partnership with the province of Nova Scotia. So hopefully this will work. Okay.
Video not
What's
playing.
that? Sorry, Jeff?
The video's not playing.
Yeah, it's not opening. That's okay. We can just share it for people. I mean, it's on the government website and it's also on the government YouTube site. And I can share a link in the chat just before we leave of the video. Okay.
Nick.
But certainly highlighting this video is a beautiful video of two Mi'kmaq nurses who are now retired, who have spent their entire career working in a system that didn't recognize who they were. And these two individuals speak of their love for the practice, their need for the practice, but they also acknowledge a lot of the things that they've endured as Mi'kmaq nurses within the system. And so this video is a beautiful video to watch. And so, like I said, I'll share that in the chat. But when we're talking about Olnu nursing, is that we have an entire unit, an entire department around Olnu nursing, which comprises of the director of Olnu nursing. But then we also have Mi'kmaq Indigenous Nurse Education Specialist, which are working with the institutions across the province to ensure several things. One is promoting the nursing profession within our own communities and letting people know that, the ability to be a nurse is there and that we're there to support you. That we're supporting individuals in their pathways to the institutions. And so working with them in the high school level to say, these are the courses that you need to get in. Here's your closest university that has the programming. Let us help you navigate that. It's also working with the institutions themselves to develop culturally safe and culturally responsive programming. That not only are we creating opportunity for Mi'kmaq people within these institutions to gather in a meaningful way, but that the curricula is also reflective of our needs and lived reality. It's supporting students while they're in course. So while we have, right now with the Nova Scotia Community College, we have the LPN program that's specific to the Mi'kmaq. Our institutions, our post-secondary institutions at the university level also hold nursing programs that have Mi'kmaq students in it. And so our Mi'kmaq Indigenous Nurse Education Specialist create space to check in and support our students as they're going through course. And in turn, it's about linking and building relationships with our community health teams. That if we recognize that each of the Mi'kmaq communities hold self-autonomy to their health, then that means that we want to make sure that we have a relationship with each of the communities to help that bridging, to ensure that, our goal is to eventually have our own Mi'kmaq nurse workforce. And we have the ability to do it, not only in the structure that we're creating, but in the population. That we have a lot of humans that are interested in this pathway. And so our goal is to move people through that. We also have our oral health promotion. And so each community, again, has their own structure, have their own way of doing oral health. But Tajikeimik in partnership with Duigan, and Duigan is a partnership between the 5 Mi'kmaq communities in Unama'ki, who are part of course, Tajikeimik, is that we have released a brand new children's book that really emphasizes the promotion of healthy habits within baby healthy teeth. And that this book is being distributed to all Mi'kmaq parents throughout Nova Scotia. But even beyond that, in saying that every single one of you on the call today have the ability to purchase this book through our Tajikeimik website. That this information is important because we're recognizing that the oral health of our communities is a growing concern, and it continues to be a growing concern. And to be proactive is to recognize we have to start with our little people. That's where those teeth are coming out. And so we have to ensure that our families understand the importance of healthy habits in oral health. We're also really excited in recognizing that midwifery is a big thing in Nova Scotia, not just for the Mi'kmaq, but for all Nova Scotians. And so for us, from the Mi'kmaq perspective, is that we're developing an UNU specific midwifery programming, and that we're supporting partners in being culturally responsive and inclusive to those accessing services outside of our community, and recognizing that the way in which we create space for parents, mothers, to go through the birthing ceremony can be very scary, and that it's very clinical and it's very sterile. And it's recognizing that birth is a beautiful thing, in recognizing that it's very ceremonial, and that there are practices and approaches that we have within our culture, that really help support the parents, the mother, the child, the extended family, as we go through this extremely beautiful ceremony, this process. And I think to every single one of you here on our call today, and for those of you that will listen hereafter, is that when a new bundle of joy has been brought into this world within our own families, there is excitement that we gather, that we celebrate. And that happens over a period of days, maybe even a couple of over hours, whatever that may look like, depending on the family. And so it's a beautiful process for us all. And so from a Mi'kmaq perspective, it's really recognizing that we have processes in place that we've had for thousands of years that have really supported moms in their journey. That there are ceremonies and practices before the child enters the world, when the child enters the world, to the ones who hold the child first, to the one who washes the child first. That there are all these things that are in place, and that for so long, that birthing ceremonies and the way that our women have been expected and asked to show up within these structures haven't created space for this. And so we are extremely excited to announce that we are opening our own birthing lodge, where Mi'kmaq women from our communities will be able to go to this place and to welcome their bundle in a very intentional, in a very ceremonial, in a very traditional, and in a very spiritual way. And we're very excited for that. We're also in the process of welcoming our ONU cancer lead, in recognizing that our data, our information shows that cancer is a real thing that's affecting our communities at alarming rates. And so the Mi'kmaq Nation has developed a Mi'kmaq cancer strategy that was built upon the engagement with communities, around the education with communities, in identifying what currently is available and what we're missing. But this strategy addresses not only prevention and screening, but survivorship and space to have meaningful and intentional conversations about end of life. and that our strategy is being culturally responsive and culturally safe in recognizing all of the processes and procedures that need to be in place to be able to have these types of conversations in a good way. And so when we think of the strategy itself, Maui abahan maltundinej, ak maliaptultinej cancer, translates to let's help each other figure out cancer. Let's do it together as a collective, not hierarchical, not in the sense of, well, we're the institution and you're just coming for treatment. We're recognizing the humanity. We're recognizing the humanness that tends to be forgotten within these structures. And of course, I saved the best for last in saying that this is the work that I'm doing. No reason, why I left the public service to come back to community is because these things are important. That for us, for mental wellness and healing, is that mental wellness is recognizing that we need healing as a nation, as individual communities, but we also need healing for men and youth and women and parents and our elders and our LGBTQIA2+. We need wellness for those with disabilities, those that are struggling with mental health concerns, but also recognizing our Indian residential school survivors and their families. They need healing. And so our mental wellness and healing is also talking about land-based. How do we get back out on the land? How do we start talking about traditional foods and food security and sovereignty? How do we create space for traditional healing practices in our elders? That part of healing is also about physical activity and movement. That it doesn't all have to be clinical, that we have the ability to approach it in an arts-based way. That our wellness and healing also is about addressing our concerns around justice, around policing, around wellness checks. It's also about human trafficking and sexual exploitation. And to our healing aspect, it's about treatment. It's about counseling. It's about withdrawal management, detoxification, and harm reduction. That we have to create an opportunity for people to refine balance, to refine wellness. And in order to do that, we have to create space for healing. And so when we look at where we are now, is that Mi'kmaq don't have a particular place to go and do detox. That we can't get into treatment facilities without detoxification. That our youth, in all of the numbers that show that our youth are the highest at risk for suicide, we have nowheres for them to go. Where are we supposed to send them? The closest place to send them is out west. They don't want to leave Mi'kmaq. And so these are the things that we are up against in trying to address as we talk about health transformation. And so to my last slide here, I'm going to move my head so that you can see some of these pieces here. Is that you can check out our website, that you can go on to our website, which is www.mhwns.ca, which essentially stands for Mi'kmaq Health Wellness Nova Scotia. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, or you can email us. That we are adopting every way possible to ensure that we are connecting in all the right ways. And so, my friends, that is my presentation with 5 minutes remaining. That's good. So I'll stop sharing here and, we'll take the last 5 minutes to create space for any questions, comments, clarification.
Oh, and Nick, there is one question in the Q&A. It's asking about, is there an application process for health support services? Do people self-refer or can organizations refer people?
In what context? Sorry. Sorry, I'm trying
Um,
to open the questions as well.
um,
For health support services, do people self-refer or can organizations refer people? So great question. Um, where we are right now is that there's a dichotomy in our system where the way in which it's been structured from a colonial standpoint is that we have on-reserve population and we have off-reserve population. The way in which these two different groups of people, who are all the same people, which is the Mi'kmaq Nation, the way in which they access health is totally different. And so when it comes to referral processes and all of that those pieces, um, it's like those referrals are still part of the Nova Scotia Health Authority, that we are still leaning on our partners to continue to provide these types of services outside of the services that we offer within community, which would be conditioned to where the individual is um, essentially an Indian registered band member of community. So that's a very complex question that's being asked. But when in doubt, when you have an individual that's looking to access some type of service, you're always more than welcome to reach out to our organization, and we will help provide that navigation for not only you, but for the individual that's seeking those types of answers or inquiry. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Nick. I don't see any other questions currently outstanding. I do just want to let you know that I found the video, El New
Oh,
Nerd
beautiful.
Living
Okay.
Legacies. I posted that on the commission's website where this event was listed, and that's where the
Yeah,
recording of this session will also be posted. I've also posted a link directly to Tajikeimik's website, so folks can find
beautiful.
that there as well. I do want to thank you once again for taking the time to share this ambitious, transformative, systemic work. It really is incredible to hear all of what's underway already. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
we can bring you back at some point, Nick, in the coming years to share more around this work and just the how much we can learn uh, in as Nova Scotia's healthcare, as the country's healthcare system is undergoing such transformation. The opportunities to learn through your work is vast. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, to all of the individuals that are on the call, is reach out anytime. That we are more than happy to have conversation around any type of inquiries, questions, clarification on specific things. That in the little time that we have been created, which this has been a work in progress for since 2009. But with that MOU just being signed in 2021, that from 2021 to present day, we've done a lot, and we have a long way to go. And so, there's a lot of gray area right now. And so if you find yourself within that grayness, reach out to us because we will essentially, well, we are the second health authority in this province. And so, that's important. It's important to recognize. So thank you again.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you everyone for tuning in. The recording will be posted within a few hours. So for those that know others who may have wanted to be here but couldn't, please do share this presentation. And thank you once again, Nick.
Perfect. Thank you. Molto